Hi again. The next book we're going to talk about in the martial arts series is the book written by Robert W. Smith. We already talked about Secret Fighting Arts of the World by John Gilby, but this is actually a book by Smith himself, and it's his Martial Musings. Now, he wrote many books, but this I feel is a kind of amalgamation of some of his best, and it was probably his last book as far as I can remember. So it's kind of his life experience. It goes from it's autobiographical in part from his experiences in the United States Marine Corps, the kind of training he did there at what was called combat conditioning and combat judo, uh, to more formal judo around the Chicago area where he trained. Now, at the time, judo was rather a nascent activity in the United States, so he trained with many of the pioneers, many of whom were Japanese. Uh, the journey then takes him to Taiwan, where he became very heavily involved in Chinese martial arts, all the different systems, and he had really good contacts, and he was able to interview and train with many of the top personalities, most of whom were totally unknown in the West at the time. And this enabled him to write several books about various Chinese systems. He went to Japan while he was in the Far East, and he visited the JKA, the karate dojo. He visited Kyokushinkai and the Aikikai, where he met the founder, Master Ueshiba. And he talks about all those different martial arts. He in Japan he stayed at Don Drager's place at Ichigaya, where all the different martial artists stayed, and he does a really good tribute to Don Drager in the book. He obviously had a great regard for him, and they co-authored a couple of books. Another character from that time he talks about is John Blooming. John Blooming is an absolute giant, literally and figuratively, in the martial arts world. He was, I think, a sixth dan in judo, and got to a similar grade in Kyokushinkai karate, and was the guy in the martial arts in Holland, and a lot of his students became involved in mixed martial arts later on. He later on started groups in America, and they had a big Tai Chi training group with Chen Manching, who's probably the top master in the world. There's a lot about that training and the lessons that he learned in the book. It's Robert W. Smith is a very articulate person, and the book is a very literate book. It's full of quotes and references and allusions. It's very well written. I met him once. He came to the UK to the big Hay-on Wye book fair, which is interested in literature, and he came down to Liverpool because he did some articles for Terry for Fighting Arts magazine, and the three of us had dinner in Chinatown, and Terry said to him, he said, Dennis worked out that you were in the CIA, which I had from his writing. I kind of put two and two together. He was a CIA analyst in Taiwan, and he laughed and admitted it, and he said the only field operation I ever did, he said, was when they parachuted me into mainland China to witness the death match between Count Dante and the Chinese champion. And back then in the early days, Count Dante was quite a figure in the martial arts. He's one of these guys who claimed all sorts of awards and titles and championships. The book covers a lot of characters. He besides Draeger and Blooming and some of the Chinese and Japanese people, he talks about Dermot Pat O'Neill, Fairbairn, people like that. He goes on to talk about Hollywood martial arts and weird stuff. It put an awful lot of material into this book, and I've reread it several times. Um, it's a really great collection of material by a really great writer who really knew the subject, both as a participant in it and as an observer of it. And again, this is one of the books that should be in your library.